Hey, good morning. All right, Mr. Robinson here. Some American history too. Okay, so look, we just finished the last unit, which was the New Deal, the Great Depression, and the New Deal. And a lot of people say what brought the country out of the the Depression was actually this World War, the Second World War that the country got into to start over. Now, look, I'm gonna show you my mug here. I don't know if you can see it. Workday. Okay, I just I put coffee in that thing, and so it's time to work. So I'm gonna start with some of the obviously where it says World War II begins, the beginnings of World War II. We're going to look at some of the background and then the rise of these dictatorships and fascism, something called fascism. Now, this has to do, a lot of it has to do with more world history, but I'm going to test you on this, so it's important that you know some of these causes to the war. So, yeah, here we go. Let's just go ahead and get into it. World War II begins. Pre-war foreign policy. So America, this is America now, had focused on its own domestic issues. When we talk about domestic issues, domestic meaning within America, not foreign policy, within America. There was anti-war feelings. This is a result of World War I. America wanted to be isolated. Remember, a return to normalcy, a return back to isolation policy. And we passed something called the Neutrality Acts, meaning that America is not going to become involved in European affairs, and America is going to stay neutral and not sell weapons to these nations that are in conflict. All right. President Roosevelt gives something called the quarantine speech. I think we should be more familiar now with the word quarantine because of this COVID pandemic. What that is basically just staying away or staying out of other affairs, staying away from other people, in this case, other countries in Europe. So this is America. Now, in Europe, though, there's something else is way different is happening in Europe in Asia as well. So first we'll look at just look at Europe, okay, because this is kind of where it starts. In Europe, remember that Treaty of Versailles had really it had punished, it had embarrassed Germany. So Germany, they again they didn't feel like they lost the war, the First World War, and so they want to regain this territory, regain their own strength. They're a very proud people. And the government that had capitulated after the first, well, not totally, they didn't totally surrender, but that First World War, the government that basically signed the armistice and the surrender, the Weimar Republic, they failed, and you have the rise of one Adolf Hitler. I'm sure you've heard of it. In the Third Reich and the Nazi Party. This is what's going on in Germany. And in Italy, something else has happened. You have the rise of Benito Mussolini. They're fascist dictator. Fascism is basically like dictatorship or one party rule by a one party rule, and then that one individual rules at the top of that party. So Italy's doing that as well. They have dreams of recreating a Roman Empire, and Italy's going to go into Africa and start to try to expand its empire that way. Germany is taking over, methodically taking over these territories in Europe. Japan doing the same thing. Japan is a little different in that Japan was on the winning side in the First World War, but and part of this has to do with racism as well. They weren't really treated as a victor, not like some of these other countries like France and England were. And certainly they didn't play as big a role as France and England did in World War One, but they're kind of given the I don't know if you've heard the word. They're left out of the winning. They're left out at the Treaty of Versailles. So they thought, well, now we got to get our own territory and our own land. And they're a very proud people as well. And so they go into Manchuria, they go into China to take over and expand their empire. Because remember, Japan, much like England, is an island nation. So they don't have, they're not full of natural resources. So they have to expand their empire in order to get those natural resources. That is one thing that America is really good, is that it's such a big, vast land. There's a lot of natural resources in America. Russia, right? There's a picture of him right there, Joseph Stalin. So the rise of the Communist Party in Russia after that Bolshevik Revolution. Joseph Stalin comes to power after Vladimir Lenin dies. And so he's the leader in Russia. There's some more. So this is Mussolini here and Adolf Hitler at the top. Remember, so they become partners. All right, those two in Japan are going to form what's known as the Axis powers, and then on the other side you have France and Britain are still aligned, forming the Allied powers. And so there is another picture of Adolf Hitler there at the bottom. Okay, so Germany, they're rearming, they're building their military back up. They're also taking over more land. All of this is violation of the Treaty of Versailles. But here's the problem. They take over Austria, they take over the Rhineland, expanding their land. But here's the problem. The World War I had been so devastating on the English and the French, even though they won, they are willing to do basically anything to avoid another world war. So they will go as far as just essentially appeasing Germany and letting Germany do these things because they want to avoid a conflict. It's like, one way I explain it to my students is, if I tell you the first day of class you can't have a cell phone in the class, you have a cell phone, I'm going to take it. All right, that's basically, in a sense, that rule is kind of like the Treaty of Versailles. But then say you pull a cell phone out and I don't take it, and the next thing you know, you're texting on your cell phone. I don't say nothing to you because I would make, in that case, maybe I want to avoid a conflict. I want to avoid a conflict with you, and then maybe I have to kick you out or call your parents or something. And that I would, in that case, I would be like France and England. And eventually it's going to get worse and worse and worse here by me practicing this policy of appeasement. Then it's just going to boil over at some point. And this is what happens in the World War. Now, I'm not trying to compare a cell phone policy with an act of war here. Okay, please don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to show you the idea of appeasement and what that means. America, again, all of this is going on. Germany is taking over all this land, violating the Treaty of Versailles. America is like, nope, we're staying out of it. Okay, we're not getting involved. So American neutrality. All right. So what? Finally, after all this appeasement, okay, the German or the French and the English are trying to appease Germany. They say, hey, you can have this land. Just don't. We just want to avoid a war at all costs. Russia and Germany, this is important. They signed something called a non-aggression pact, meaning that, hey, you don't attack us, we won't attack you. So Russia and Germany, this non-aggression pact, meaning Russia's kind of staying out of the war at this point too. So Germany doesn't have to worry about them. Also in this non-aggression pact, it contained a secret deal, whereas if the Germans were to invade Poland, the Russians would as well, and they would split Poland because Poland is between Russia and Germany, and both countries wanted Poland. So finally, September 1939, Germany attacks Poland, and this is like the final straw for France and Great Britain. They had said they would protect Poland, and they do. They stood up to their word, and so they declare war on Germany. And the Germans really at this point, that they had been appeased so much. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis did not think that France and England would call their bluff, in a sense, meaning that they would say, hey, they would actually declare war, but they did. So now Europe's at war. All right, another world war that just after the last one ended 22 years before, now you have another one that's kicking off. So boom. Germany's style of attack. Blitzkrieg, literally meaning lightning war. Remember what are the reindeers' names? Don't worry, I'll wait. Donner and Blitzen, thunder and lightning. There's a little German for you because I know some German, not a lot, but I do know a little bit. And so Blitzkrieg literally means lightning war. Heavy use of machinery, fast moving parts. Mobilized warfare is what it is. So you have tanks moving in, sweeping in very quickly with air support coming in overhead. It leads to a quick victory over Poland. They're just totally overran and mesmerized by this style of German warfare. Because remember, World War I had largely been a static war, meaning both sides were bogged down in trenches. Now all of a sudden, Germany, if you play football, they got like a spread option going on, something that no one's ever seen before. And so they're moving in with the tanks and the airplanes coming in overhead as well. They do the same thing later in 1940 in France. So they go into France, overwhelm the French. Germany invades France, conquers France. Now, something that is somewhat important is that the English and the French were there trying to protect France. Germany pushes them all the way back to the Atlantic Ocean, and the English have to do a mass evacuation at a place called Dunkirk. They made a movie about it a few years ago. And so that's what happens with the invasion of France, but France surrenders. So now it's just the only one left is England. Right? You have Germany and England. Or England is the only country opposing Germany at this point. There's a French guy, he's crying because the French surrendered, they lost. Again, I don't know what that's like because I never lost anything. But the Battle of Britain, with the Battle of Britain, it's largely an air war. Now, a lot of times I ask my professor in college, I was like, why didn't Germany just go ahead and invade England? Remember, England's an island nation, so Germany would take an amphibious assault to get onto England. And that my professor in college said he largely thought that would have been an invasion that would have failed because amphibious assaults are, when it comes to warfare, amphibious assaults are not easy. All right, that's why the United States Marines do them, and that's why they specialize in them because those guys, they're pretty tough. Those guys and girls, they're pretty tough. Winston Churchill, he's the leader of England, their prime minister. And he says, now a lot of people said, hey, Britain needs to make peace with Germany. There's no way they could stand up to Germany. Winston Churchill, he's like, no, we're going to fight on the beaches. We'll fight them in the streets. We will continue to fight on. Germany never launches an invasion of Britain. All right. Instead, what they do is it's really kind of a mistake is they go in, they decide to take on Russia. But remember, so now the United States isn't in the war at this point. Russia's not in the war at this point either. We'll get to that tomorrow. All right.